Hello everyone, it is Christine here and I am super excited to get started on sharing with you the selection of fabrics and then starting to micro fabric collage this painting, which is by Henri Le Sidaner, an amazing French artist. I'll include a link to my last video where I talked about him and talked about what I'm wanting to do with this project, as well as the Roxy's Journal of Stitchery project, which is what I'm doing this as part of. So since that time, I've had a bit of a play with how I want to do the walls. And I'm thinking the walls are probably where I need to start, because then I think the leaves, which I had done a bit of sample collaging and stitching in of the leaves, I think they need to come over the wall surface. So I think I've already selected what I want to use for the walls in terms of fabric, but I will be working with you to go through some of the fabrics I've pulled out and select what we want to use for the leaves up here. So I'll probably, I think in this episode, create this section of wall, and then we can have a play around and do the leaves in this section. I think we should have time to get a chunk of that done, whether we get the stitching done in this episode or in another one, but I have been playing with different colours of thread. So I tried a silky white, I tried a pale blue, and then I actually think I prefer a metallic. Now metallic threads can be sometimes really difficult to stitch with. You can get some good ones, and this one seems to be okay. It's a Madeira. I got it vintage, and I've got a few rolls of it. It's made in West Germany, so I think it is actually quite vintage, and it was actually stitching beautifully, and I like how the gold just looks like little shimmers of light on the piece rather than looking necessarily like stitches. The other option is that if I really want to, I could come in just with the colours of thread that match the pieces of fabric that I am collaging on. So we can have a play with that. So this is just my test piece. And this was where I tested out the wall and decided that I didn't want to do a solid piece of the muslin cloth. I want to use the muslin cloth, but then another cloth that I've got. So I've got those here. This one's just a sample, I think, from the reverse art truck. That's like a, I guess it's a finer than the muslin cloth, but it's sort of an opener weave. So I think I'll use those two, but I'll do like I've done here and cut little squares and then sort of overlap them. I think it gives me that sense of, often with the walls, they might be kind of have not a stucco put on them, but sometimes they kind of get whitewashed with a rougher sort of surface on them. So yeah, I think I preferred that look over that one. And here with the windows, I'd used a slightly off white and verging into brown to do the sort of the window frames, because if you have a look here, it does have a bit of brown in it. But again, we'll select out some fabrics. And I might show you what I'm thinking for some of the other fabrics, but I think we'll probably just try to focus on a section today. And I thought we might just do this section here, because it actually has some very interesting colours in it. And that's the fun thing, as you start looking at this in detail and as we start selecting fabrics, we're going to see some really interesting colour combos. So let's put our whites to this side, so I've got them readily handy for when we come and do the wall. I have pulled out some other whites if I need them. This is just off an old pillow sham. I've got some off whites, which again could be good for doing around the window. And what I've looked for is if I've got interesting fabrics like this one, which has an embossed sort of design on it, I think that could be quite lovely even when you're cutting little bits, because you just get a bit of variation in it. I mean, I could almost, I hadn't even thought of that, I could potentially put something like that on the wall, but I just think I do want to, I think, end up with that more piecey look. But maybe part of it, or maybe some section of it, or maybe even these little parts of the window, which would be a bit more like reflective parts. So I will keep that, because I do want to have a play around with that sort of that element of it. I'm just going to move the lights just to see if I can get better light on the surface. So I'll keep these whites out. I've then got other ones. This is another, probably removed off the back of like a pillow. This would be another sample from the reverse art truck. So I don't think I need those ones, but I'll put them to the side. I did also toy with the idea of whether I use some sorts of lace, or even some things like this. I was wondering, would I use something like lace down for these little flower planters? So I've just kept those sort of close at hand. This one might be good for some of these areas around the windows. Don't know if I should bring you down even a little bit more, just so you can even more see the picture. And sorry, just bumped the camera. So yeah, I thought that could potentially be good for that area. And again, this has a embossed sort of design on it, so I might keep that out. And another embossed design, I think that's a little bit more off-white. And this one has a little square meshy grid. And then this is another fabric sample from the reverse art truck. Probably don't need that one, I don't think. So they were some of the whites. This is then, I think this might have been what I was using. Maybe not. No, that one looks a bit darker there. But this could actually be quite good for some of these areas here. So I'll keep that one out. Oh yeah, I think what I was using on the other one for this area was some of the bits of this little fabric sample, which has actually some purple and some brown and some sort of creaminess. So I will keep that because that was handy. I've got some greys which could come in handy for some of these areas, because there's definitely greys in this, a grey sort of bluey colour. So I'll keep some of that. I've got another sort of like tanny colour which could be good for some of the sections, like over here. You can see where that sort of got yellow into this tanny colour. Some blues, that's a stripe, but if I was cutting these pieces out, even if I catch a bit of the white stripe, it kind of just gives a bit of interest to it. Let me just shake a few things out of here. We don't need that one. I've got a whole container with, it's got a few greens mixed in, but mainly with, originally I was thinking, would I use triangle shapes? But I like triangles if I am cutting up scrap fabrics, in that you can get a circle out of them, you can get a square, you can get more triangles. So this mix of sort of tans and yellows will probably come in quite handy across this area, but will also give me some things to pick out some of the yellows and greeny colours up here. So I will keep this container handy. And I'm really just looking for, so I quite like where it's got a little design on it and where I get variation in a piece. So little pieces with little designs on them, even bigger designs. Once you sort of trim them down, they start to look, to give interest to the piece. So don't just look for flat colours, look for things that have either interesting layers in them or little prints that when you cut them will give variation. So I mean, I wouldn't be cutting the leaf itself, but yeah, if I've got a bit of the dark green and a bit of the light green, that definitely gives interest. I'll keep some of these greens up here as well. Even some of these pieces where you can get multiple colours depending what you're needing. So for example here, I might get some of my chair out of it, but this sort of a colour would come in up here. And even where you've got the lighter bit, you could use the lighter and the darker bits. So looking for those sorts of things. When we get down eventually, and you probably can't see it because I've got you zoomed in, but when we get down to the table, pieces like this with this sort of marble design on it, they are going to be really useful. Even potentially for things like the window, they could be useful. I do have another fabric that I was using for the windows here, which I'm sure we will come across. But again, even fabrics like this flower one, you're just cutting a little section, and yeah, I think I could even get some of the window effects if you have a look. I'm going to take the little card out of it, and if I was wanting to evoke, let me bring it down so you can see it a bit better. If I was wanting to evoke that little window scene, see it's got some sort of upward strokes in it. If I was using the petals of that, that would work sensationally well. So I'm going to try and remember that. I'll probably forget, but that's where I suppose making a video is good. Again, when I come down to do some of the table, this could be very good, but there is blue in all around, so keeping sort of some blues out is very, very handy. Again, something like this to cut leaves out of, because you're getting some dark, some medium and some light in a single piece. So yeah, like that colour is there. The lighter colour is also there. So I think that's going to be really handy. This one has some lighter and then some darker, and you can see these sorts of colours in there. The lighter you can also see mixed in. So really, when you're doing this sort of fabric collage, as much as possible to draw from, you probably want decent sized pieces if you're going to be cutting multiple and you want the same sort of leaf colours to come through in different parts of the piece, but you don't need a lot. Probably a piece like that's absolutely fine. This one will give a lot of value, I think, because it's got a lot of different colours that can be matched in. So even if you have a fabric where it might have something on it that isn't in the piece, you can just cut the pieces you need. But looking at something like this, it's actually amazing how many of the colours, the green, definitely that orangey colour, whether it's there or there, this darker, deeper sort of bluey green, definitely in the piece, this lighter bluey grey, even in the little planters down there. I know I've seen it sort of like over there, definitely in the piece, the lighter grey, almost thought some of the walls and definitely some of the tablecloth. So it's just fascinating looking at your fabrics with a lens of like a painting as your inspiration. Now looking at something like this, you can definitely use some of the yellows. Whether the greens will be right, no, there are definitely some of those greens over there, and there'd even be some pieces up here. Piece like this, very bold. But again, if you just need a little bit of pink, you can use that. Now, something else to think about when you're looking through your fabrics is look at both the front and the back. Now, on some pieces like this, the front and the back are a very similar intensity, but even on this one, the pink here is a bit more muted with a bit more white sort of mixed into it. But if you take something like this one, you've got quite a goldy front, which could be great again when we're doing this area, but even just picking out little colours in the area up here. But if you go to the other side of it, it's much more muted, and that can particularly come in handy. So again, like with this, very bright on the front, and go to the back and you're getting some more muted tones. This one's another one where it kind of is very much similar colour at front and at back. But again, some of these little sections where you've got a bit of variation in colour, they're going to be great to pick out these bits. I've got another whole box of mixy bits. So I've got lots of these little squares from the sewing layer, and again, will be good to just be able to use different tones of it for different pieces. These yellows, which have yellows and whites, again, I think I have used at least one of those pieces already. Eventually, I think I might be looking at how I use this sort of mesh to give the sense of the shadows down the sides here. So I've got more of this on the beaded pieces I have. These sorts of ones, which are almost like a marble type effect, really, really great for evoking leaves. I was really happy when I was looking through my stash the other day and I came across this piece, because I just think it's going to be brilliant for doing the chairs, for picking out some of these bits in the garden where the sun is picking up the colour. So I think this is going to be incredibly useful. This would be another one. I think on the back it's a lot more muted on the back if you were just wanting a sort of a paler orange, for example. So I'm not sure, but like even in some of these sections there is a paler element to it. So I'll keep that to the side because that will probably come a bit later. Something like this, again, with lots of colours in it, it's going to help. Now you might think, oh, where's purple in this piece? But if you have a look at the shading and the brush strokes in the yard, there's quite a lot of mauviness. And now you might not want to use this side of it, but when you turn it over, you start to get some really nice muted tones. So this sort of colour of purple is probably going to be just right. This sort of lighter colour between where the swirly sunbursts are. But even up here, you've got a little bit more intense purple, so you might use a bit of that there and there. Sorry, and you can't probably see that a little bit because we are zoomed in. So you've got little bits of actual purple there, you've got bits of pink. So this sort of one will be super helpful if you're wanting some greens or just some lovely natural colours. Again, pieces like this. I pulled out a whole lot of my, I'll just bring you up a little bit here. Pulled out a whole lot of my charm squares. And so I've probably got more than I need here and multiples of some, but just picking out like stripes. If you're cutting just a little piece out, you're not going to see the stripe design, but you are going to get a bit of colour variation. Again, something like this side could be really useful because I probably don't need anything in that level of intensity. Although in fact there's something down on the bottle that's slightly, almost, it could be this little pale section. So you just never know. Never say never. So pull yourself out a variety. Even these little micro check gingham samples from the reverse art truck. By the time I cut them up, I think they could be super as well. And then I've got some stripy ones. So I've really just pulled out the colours that are in the piece. So it's got greens, it's got yellows, it's got some pink, it's got some purple, it's got blues, it's got whites, it's got greys, it's got orange, it's got some reds. There's very few colours actually not in there. So I really have pulled out quite a diverse range. Again, here, very bright side, but you look at the other side and you're starting to get some more muted colours and almost some more variation. So yeah, I've already been cutting into and using some of this when I've been doing these pieces up there. So yeah, lots of these are probably more when I get down there, but also in the yard there's a fair bit of pink across there. So I've got those, got some more blues. Again, I thought this print could be good when we come to do the windows as well. So I don't even have to use the same in all the windows, but I thought the variation on this could be super for the windows. So I might keep a few pieces of that out. Again, lots of yellows, lots of greens. So I think I've probably shown you enough on fabrics, but yeah, just pull out a variety. And if you ever get these sort of little scrap packs, they are going to be super handy. I think this would have been someone's like little quilting collection of fabrics, and they're just all sorts of prints, and some of them are like silly little, well, sorry, not silly, but probably not something I'm going to use in my own stitching, like a little dinosaur, but the colours absolutely perfect to use, and even ones with little interesting textural elements. So I think it's now time to make a start, because we learn by doing, don't we? So I'm going to bring you down close enough to this piece that you'll be able to see properly what we're doing. But you really just need to be able to see the area that I'm going to be working on. Just wondering if I pull it a tiny bit closer to me, and then I'll bring you a tiny bit closer to me. And I've got myself a pair of tweezers if I need them, and I've got myself some of my little reusable tublets. And so I think, as I was mentioning, that the first thing I'm going to do is just work on a little section of wall, and I'm going to use this technique rather than this one. And so we need to start by cutting up some of our what we call here in Australia muslin cloth, and some of the other piece of fabric, as I lean down to pick it up off the floor, the other piece of fabric that we looked at. So I will get my nice strong big scissors, and I will, where have I started on that one? May as well continue at the end that I was at. And so because we're going to need to do a bit of wall, I'll just cut up some pieces. And so I'll do them about the size of what the brush strokes look like they are on here. So not super big and not super small, because you want to still be able to position them and not have them sort of totally disintegrate. So I'll start by cutting some strips. And thank you so much for everyone's lovely comments and the folks that have said, oh, you're inspired to have a play with this sort of concept, or maybe you're going to play with the larger sort of scale concept that I shared from Collage Quilter and the lovely book that I got for Christmas. And I'm glad some of you have been able to find at libraries some of the books that I showed. So I'm just going to cut a little for the walls. I don't mind it being a bit squarer. For the leaves, I'm going to be kind of curving them off a bit. I could always cut some as more little, would I like trying? No, I think I'll stick with the squares because I'm going to sort of arrange them slightly overlapping, so I think it will still give me that triangular effect. So I've got a bit of wall done, and then we'll start on some leaves. And then I've found with stitching that using a nice fine sharp needle works well, given the smallness of the pieces. And I do think I'm going to go with the gold because it was giving a really subtle but just a lovely little additional glint of colour, because really the light, there's a lot of light play in this piece. So I think those little flashes of light could be quite nice. It sort of wasn't coming out as a glary metallic. So yeah, I suggest if you're going to do this, get yourself some little reusable containers. These are actually an old set of, I think we got them from Alex's parents. They came from down in their garage. They didn't have any lids for them, but I thought, yeah, they'll be perfect in my craft room to just kind of sort projects into, keep threads in, keep scraps in this case, cut your little collage pieces into. So it's nice to be able to repurpose. I think Alex just sometimes shakes his head because he's like, really? You need to take that to your craft room? Yep. I can see a purpose for it. Granted, don't keep everything. You want your craft room to still be sort of not cluttered. You want it to be a pleasant space to create in. Turn the air conditioning on, but the air conditioning's on in the room next door that I've left the door open to. So hopefully it'll stay cool enough because it was, yeah, 31-degree day. I was watching the news and just horrified by seeing what's happening in the US with the wildfires. So sending out my thoughts to all that either are being impacted yourselves or friends or family, or just kind of, yeah, watching on. It's quite shocking, like, to be winter and to have that level of fires, and yeah, just sort of, yeah, the fire services just not being able to keep up with it because of the scale of it. So that's that one, and then let's do our muslin cloth. I think I did have a piece of that somewhere, but that's okay. Let's just take a piece off. Right. I wonder if I can cut more than one piece at a time, maybe. Let's do some cuts up there. Cuts up there. Just trying to attach, I think because it's got such fine fibres, it's trying to attach to the scissors. Now I'll leave the edgy pieces, but here we can just cut ourselves again some little squares. And yeah, it doesn't have to be exactly even, and even at those little corners where it's got the fold, it's okay to just kind of cut it and see how it lands. Okay. regular pieces, but again, just pick what you want when you want, and you can always trim it down as you go as well. I just like to get a bit if I'm planning to kind of collage a area collectively. I just want to get a few pieces going at the one time. And I'm not even worrying if some others get caught up when I'm picking up these pieces. I'm just giving it a snipperoo. It can all come in handy, and I'll give it a little shake to try and separate the kind of the bits that are stuck together, but we can do that as we go as well. So I'm just going to put these off to the side there. Now what I worked out when I was having a play with the walls is that I originally at first I was putting each of these down individually using my tweezers and rubbing the piece on the glue and then putting it down, which I'll probably do when I'm doing the leaves, but for this section I worked out I could actually just put some glue down and then stick the pieces, and so I think I'm going to apply that technique here. So I'm just using Yoo-hoo glue, and I'm just going to apply it to the area that I'm working on. And the good thing with the Yoo-hoo glue is that it is acid free, and it's not going to damage it, and this is printed on this fabric where the colour is pretty colour fast, I think, and so it's actually going to work quite well, I think. You can, the Collage Quilter uses a product called Steam a Seam Light 2, but with that you have to back the pieces, then trim them, and it gets the sticky sort of backing on them. But I think that would be too difficult with something of this size, because her collage pieces are larger than what I'm doing here. So I'm really just going to sort of randomly select and lay down. So sort of putting, and I'll just work sort of at first in, because there's almost like a bit of a line down here. So I'll just kind of use, I think I'll use that, although I don't think it's not a super defined line. Here I'll separate my pieces. So I'm not worrying if they overlap a bit, and if I need to kind of add a bit of glue at the end, but remember I'm also going to be stitching on over all of these sections, so they will get held down. So these are just a pair of like eyebrow, I think they're eyebrow tweezers. In fact, I was looking at my eyebrows before, they've gone a little bit, got a bit feral. I think when you're working from home, you don't always kind of, yeah, I certainly don't do that close peer in the mirror. I'm usually just peering at fabrics instead, aren't I? I do laugh some days when I'm working from home and I've just swept my hair up into like a hair clip, and I think, oh, did I give the hair a brush before I did that, or did I just roll it up, put it on my head? So I'll just sort of keep it off this line, which is the line of the window, although I'll be using probably another fabric over the top of that, so I think that will be fine. But I'm pretty happy. I'm hoping you can see okay. I'm pretty happy with how this is starting to look. I'm just going to check my glue is still tacky, which it is. So yeah, Yoo-hoo glue I do tend to love using for my textile arts. Trying to make sure I don't get two sheets of the, so even if it's a little bit fall apart, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm still going to put it in and use its little fibers. And so up here, that's where I'm going to bring the leaves back down to sort of overlap the area. So I'll then look at my sort of master print to my reference print. So when I was printing it out, I did also print an additional picture out as well. And then I've got the piece that my play sort of collagey piece as well. I put that down there. I feel like I might need to apply a little bit more glue, and I'll just use that to help sort of stick it down. So I'm just going to put some over the top as well. and then just do a bit of smoothing with my finger, and even just bringing some of the fibres back a little bit. That one seems to be disintegrating, so we'll take that off because the glue sort of caught it. I'll just move these ones a little bit with the tweezers, and then we'll get in and add some more fibres. So that's a longer little piece, but I think that could go well down there. And then another. So I like this sort of alternating angles, alternating the two fabrics, so you don't get that sort of that kind of flat effect. I do want it to have a brush strokey effect. I want it to be the sort of the sum of the parts coming together to conjure the image. I think that's more fun rather than just cutting out like something that looked like leaves and having an entire section that was leaves. I like to create the leaves like by individual bits and create the wall by individual brush strokes of fabric. I think I did hear Emily Taylor from Collage Quilter, describe it as like paint by numbers, but with fabric. But then it really is a bit more because you're actually thinking about the sort of, the textures and the angles and how you cut the pieces, and how you apply the pieces, how you stitch the pieces. So there's a lot of, I think there's actually a fair bit of creativity, even though you might think, oh, it's just copying, isn't it? Just copying a painting. Yeah, I think there's a bit more. So I'll just put a piece up there, but again, we'll be bringing, I think, the leaves down over this area. Wondering if we should do this bit of wall. It does have a little bit more greyness to it, but I think that's okay, unless I want to trial adding anything else into the mix just to give that bit of wall a bit more. So I'm just going to have a look what I've got in my, I do have these pieces, so I'm just wondering if I mix any of these into the mix. So let's take the edge off, and then I'll just get myself a let's get rid of that edge because I don't think I need that tiny edge. And then maybe, because I don't want to have the actual lines, I'm going to just cut myself some. These are quite small triangles, but we'll see how we go. Cut some in square shapes as well, but do you think the triangles could be, the more irregular shaped could be good? Not even really triangles, more like little funny shaped rectangles. Just little angular shapes. I get rid of the ratty edges, like the sort of raggedy edges. Normally I keep those in my slow stitch, but for this it's going to be easier not to be kind of doing battle with those loose threads to bring them back into alignment. And given the pieces are so small, you don't want them to be half unraveling already. So I think, let's just have a look before we put the glue down. I think this could be nice just to kind of give that sense, but I think I'll then combine that with some of the, probably some of the muslin, I think, because then I'll be able to see some of the grey through. So I might do a layer, I might do some grey to start and then put some muslin on the top of it, I think. So again, just coming in with my glue, and then let's bring some of the grey out. So again, that's just a little, probably Italian linen, or sorry, Italian cotton fabric sample from the Reverse Art Truck. I have to remember to let them know I'm using their, again, I think I use their things quite often, but particularly good when you want a variety of colours, if you can get some little sample packs. These are just the ones that like factories get to work out what they're going to make their clothes or garments, etc., garments and furniture and things out of. And then the Reverse Art Truck gets them to supply to creators, schools. Lots of school teachers go there. If you go there sort of, in fact it'll be soon in the lead up to when schools go back, the teachers are all there getting supplies for the the art room. It's just such a great idea to repurpose something that would otherwise absolutely go to landfill. And for those of us that are creatives, it's such a benefit to get supplies that are really lovely, like quality Italian linens. And for this sort of work and for a lot of slow stitching, all you need is small quantities anyway. So it's super, super handy. So I'm trying not to put my lines sort of in any regular fashion, and I think bringing the cheesecloth or the muslin in over the top will be helpful. And I know in other parts of the world, I think muslin has a different meaning to yours at cheesecloth, but at least you've seen what it looks like, so you can apply your own naming convention to it. I need to put that at a different angle if I don't want it to look too regular. We need to put one in the middle here. And so then I think with that little grey area, and I do love how it's kind of then created the sense of the wall and some bits being a bit further out, I've then applied some glue over the top of it. And I'm really happy with how that's kind of working. I thought it might be a bit more troublesome, but I think it would be troublesome if you tried to apply it over this, which is very fine and tends to move and bunch a bit. But I'm just thinking I just want some nice fanning out, but where you can still see the grey underneath. So I don't want to cover the whole of the grey. So I'm just going to carefully position them so there's a bit of a gap and just spread the fibres out a bit so it's just nice and sort of sketchy. So that it has a different consistency to this piece, which is more intensely white. I want to still be able to see the grey underneath, which I can. And I've just got a handkerchief that I've wetted down with some water, which I can use for my fingers if they get gluey, but also to clean my tweezers before we go on to the next section, because they are getting a little bit of residue on them from the calico and picking up little bits of glue. But you'll see that it doesn't take too long. Obviously you're working in sections, but it's going to be doable to get this size image done. So I'm hoping you can see. I'll take you down just even a little bit closer. Maybe I'll actually not take you down but zoom you in, and you can get a look at how that's going. Let's try and get some focus on it. So I'm really happy with that actually. I don't know, I think it does need to actually come down a bit more down to there, does it? I probably need to put my few more bits of grey and then a bit more of the muslin on. It's hard to tell whether that's planter box, and I guess that's where I can bring a bit of my own artistic interpretation into it as well, but I think it would look good with something there, so we'll just bring a bit more. Trying not to get Travis fur in, although I do tend to put Travis fur in everything, and hey, maybe he wants to be in a painting as well. What's that funny saying? Paint me like one of your French ladies. Sometimes when Travis is lounging around, I say that saying to him. Not that I'm sure he knows, although he knows a lot. Our Travis, the black Labrador. Sure, he's lived some other lives. I sometimes ask him if he's my nana that's come back to keep me company, because I feel like he makes me laugh and he brings me happiness, and I feel like he's got a little bit of, Nana had a lovely little sort of cheeky quirk to her, and I just feel like, yeah, maybe Travis has come back as, Nana's come back as Travis, or imbued a bit of Nana into him. And Nana loved her food as well, right to the end. She'd love an ice cream. She'd love some fish and chips. Loved her desserts. So that is that section done, and I'm really happy with that. So I think we now get to move on to some of the greenery. Sorry for the moving around. I'm just trying to sort of get you at a point where you can see, but it's not. It's not too close. So let's get playing with the greenery. So there's definitely some nice green like that, I reckon. You would have seen if you looked at my video with the package I sent to the lovely Paula in New Zealand. I sent her some of this ducky sort of Eastery fabric. So here I could cut into a plastic container, but I'm actually just going to cut them here because I'll be able to just see them. And I reckon I probably need about sort of 5 of these. But what I'm going to do is just make sure I put aside the fabrics I've used for particular colours, so that when I get to those colours elsewhere, I can kind of pull this same fabric out, and it will give a bit of unity across the piece. So I could use really small scissors here. It's funny, I actually find these big scissors quite good to use for cutting. I don't know why. Just cutting some little shapes, sort of like, yeah, I guess little leaf shapes, and that's what they are, but like little brush strokes really. And not worrying, like that one was quite large, but I can always just cut it into 2 little shapes. So I think that's probably going to give me enough to make a start. I'm going to grab my little wetted down hanky and give my tweezers a clean and my finger a clean. I've got my little towel as well. And then I'm going to have a look which glue sticks here. This one's got a nice flat surface on it. And so for these smaller pieces, what I tend to do is put them onto, I could again spread this area, but because I'm kind of going to be picking out colours here and there, I think I've still got glue on my scissors, not my scissors, my tweezers. So I put this on and then use my tweezers to sort of pull it off, and then apply a little patch of colour. And so sort of just look where the colour is. Again, don't have to be super precise, because we're really just, we're taking what's here as a guide. And then we're just going to keep layering, and we'll be adding the stitching, and it will all come together in the end, I'm sure. And if it doesn't, then it's not the end, as the saying goes. Or I think there's a saying similar to that. So I really do hope you might give this a go. It's a great one if you only have like small amounts of, yeah, little scraps. If you've got a whole scrap jar, find a painting that has lots of colours in it like this, and evoke it, or pick a shape, and just like that snail I showed you in the last episode, that's just a really simple little design that I drew out and then filled with yeah, little pieces. There's probably another piece up there that's similar colour. Again, not going to kind of die in a ditch about being exactly precise. Where was it? That one there. And then there's probably some more over there. That's grey on the surface over here. Do I need a few more? Probably maybe one more bit up there, although I probably don't need to go that far over. But while we're here. So what I'll do then with this one is I'll set myself aside a little container for keeping some of my leafy colours in. Sticking to the tweezers. And you can, I was at first using like my fingers to swipe it across, but then I was finding I was getting really gummy fingers, so it wasn't great for that. So we've done that colour. Let's then pick another colour. I don't know if a bit of our dinosaur would be useful in here. No, I think I need maybe a bit more, some green in here. Yeah, I think some of that green could be useful, so we'll just, again, steal some of the green. Actually, this piece has a bit more of it on, so I might even just cut myself out the greeny area. So I've got that now. Cut that greeny area out. So that can then go in my tub to have handy. So yeah, it's multicoloured fabrics. They might be your friend for this, and ones that have sort of colour variation like this does even in these little pieces. I might need to use my smaller scissors here, which are where? Over here. Might just be a bit easier. And again, with your image, play around with what shapes. Yeah, on the little snail I use triangular shapes. On this I'm using for this more little sort of teardroppy shapes. but it doesn't really matter. Like for this piece, I can just cut a couple of these out. Basically the test for me is, does it look a bit like a brush stroke? So yeah, these I'll even cut as little triangles. Probably won't keep that black bit, although there is black in there, so I could have probably kept that in. And I'll put this bit aside in my container with what I'm using, which is over here. Great. So again, I will just start picking up these pieces and applying them sort of into where I can see those colours. A little bit of that in there. Yep. A little bit more up here. Probably don't need too much more of this. I'll use a little bit of that down there, I think. And then these pieces I can sweep up and put again in my little container. And I've got some little jars that my very small pieces can go in, but they are like my little, that's like my little pellet there. And then I need some of this sort of, I'm wondering if any of this, that could actually be quite good for in there. So take a bit of this. And again, I can just cut myself some little leafy shapes. Probably do need to get my smaller scissors. I think when it's attached to the larger fabric it's okay, but when it's like this, it's probably easier to use these little ones. Take my little raggedy edge off, as I say. I just don't want that disintegration to have to deal with. But this one's great because it's already got the pattern in the fabric, and then it's got the variation of colour as well. So again, it's going to give that lovely sense of sort of sunlight through the leaves, I think, and catching on the leaves. And so even that little piece I'm sure will come in handy. I'm just going to not cut too many pieces, because the more I can get sort of showing you the process of popping it down. Just checking, yep, I've still got you in the right spot. So there's some lovely, this will be good because it's got a little bit of whitey grey in it as well. So as we come down towards the wall, although given I've still got to do the wall over here, I won't do too many pieces there, but I can do some of the blues up in here, bluey sort of greeny colours. So there, that would be perfect. It's funny, sometimes the fabric does almost emulate the picture. You're like, I couldn't have picked something more perfect myself. So yeah, I think something there. What have we got down there? We've even got some little specks of red, which is interesting, or pinkiness. Tiny little speck of pinkiness in there. Can always come back and sort of add those after. So that's starting to give you a feel, and then I probably need another piece. Did I cut another one of this, or have I used? No, I think I've used all those up, so we'll grab another piece. I'm just wondering, I want something maybe a bit, and sometimes I can't even tell where I have the colours and where I don't, which is fascinating. I want maybe some of that. Now, where was that colour that was like a paler, maybe it was over here. It was one little square that I had. Now, ones like this are great as well, not so much for this area, although possibly some of the internal bits of that could be good. Let's just have a look. How would that go? I think I want something a little bit more greeny actually. So I know I saw something when we were going through where it has ended up. Oh, this one. This one. I think, yep, that's perfect. So I was looking at that little splotch over there, and this is exactly what I was thinking of and exactly what I want to nibble out. Where did that cut piece go? Oh, it's still sticking to the fabric. I didn't fully cut it out. There we go. Oops, and I've still got that one stuck to my... So this one here, yes. Yes, yes, yes. So that's what I want. And there's some more little specks of that actually in there. So I'm going to, I'm going to put this one in here. And I will, yeah, it's really interesting. You stop being able to see where you've put your bits down. There is a little bit of pink there, so I am kind of feeling like I want to go hunt a little bit of pinkiness. Now it's sort of a berry pinkiness. No, it's just this little bit there. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if that's quite pinky enough. As I say, get all those colours, get those things so you kind of got what you need. I'm thinking maybe a bit of one of these flowers could do the trick. Either maybe the back of it. That will do that will do it. I think just a little bit of this, tiny. And so sometimes cut smaller because you'll just want that. In fact, do I want the back? Yeah, I wanted the back. How I'm even telling what the back and the front is, I don't know, but I can. Come on, stick down into place. So just that little speck. And if you want it to stay tiny, then you can always put a few more bits around it. So I could grab, for example, another little bit of this blue to put at the side of it. Oops. Like this. Almost a little moony shape I got there, but that's okay. So the sum of the parts, and this is going to be something you kind of look at from a distance, but then come in, and I do want to have it probably not, I want to have it in a frame where it can be touched, so like an open frame, I think, because I want people to kind of be able to come in and then feel the stitching and see the components. So that is that so far, but I think I'd like to show you the stitching in with the gold thread just to start. I haven't shown you the windows, but we can come back and do windows in another episode. I'm just really happy to have this little area done. I will bring you out a bit though for the stitching, or not the stitching hour, the stitching few minutes. Bring my pin cushion over. I think I was using this nice little fine one. And which of my threads did I have open? This one. With metallic threads, don't take too much at a time. Now, where did my needle? Oh, there's my needle. And a beading needle can be quite good as well, so we can always give that. I've got an even finer beading needle over there. With metallics, I tend to just do the knot at the end rather than running my knot down the thread. Again, you're just trying not to put stress on your metallics, because as I say, they can be a bit finicky depending what brand you get. A lot of them are finicky. So a lot of sewers, a lot of slow stitchers avoid metallics, but in this instance, I think it's what's required. And it's just a beautiful, it's not a sort of a gaudy gold, it's just a beautiful gold, I think, and I'm really struggling to even get the tail to go through. It's being tricksy. Just when I say that they're tricksy and that this one's not too bad, I think I've got enough of a knot. We'll just not give it too much of a tug when we take it through, or we can just sort of attach it on the back first. So what I might do is just put it through, a stitch at the back, and then just put another stitch in, which is a good way if you haven't started out with a particularly big knot. And you can also just do a knot by passing your thread through itself, although try not to unthread your needle in the process like I did. Please, thread, don't become all finickety on me. We don't need that. So I can just pop up and just show you the process. So what I'm going to do is just do quite small stitches on the front and just sort of move my way around. I can do more of a stubby stitch, or here I'm going to actually just sort of do that short stitch and then jump my needle over to my next bit of fabric. And then do a small stitch and jump over to my next bit of fabric. And I'll just sort of keep jumping around the area until I'm comfortable that I've got some good, that everything is stitched down. And you can kind of periodically look at the back to see, have you covered the sort of the whole area in stitches, and you can also just run your hand over the area and see. Now eventually I might have it in a frame, but if I'm just going to kind of stitch down as I go, I will probably just have it in my hand like this. Particularly if I'm doing this more stubby stitching in a frame could be okay, but if I'm just kind of doing what I was doing before, which I'll go back to doing, which includes unthreading my needle, it seems, which I was also doing before, so I suppose that's true. Yeah, I can sort of work on the front and just be jumping from one piece to the next, which I think is the sort of quicker way to do it. Where was I up to? See, what I love about the gold thread is you just really can't even see the stitches, or you just see some little flashes, but you're not seeing the stitches because you're just doing tiny little bites on the front. Whereas with the white thread and with the pale sort of blue, I could definitely see the stitches as stitches, which I don't mind. Like in a slow stitchy piece, that's okay too. So it's kind of one where you can decide what works for you. Do you want the stitches to be a bit more visible, or do you want the stitches to sort of disappear, or possibly just in this case enhance the light in the picture? So just jumping around into a piece and then angling the needle over and popping up in another piece. And this is the sort of, I find this sort of stitching quite relaxing because it is just, yeah, it's not in a line. It's really just that sort of invisible tacking down, but in this case it's also adding a visual element with that little gold shimmer. And so even though the glue had only just been put down, it dries pretty well. I mean, it's not 100% fast drying in the sense that it lets you still be sticking things down, as you saw with the white wash wall, but it does dry quick enough that you can then get onto stitching. So I can kind of do this in sections, although I might do a larger section of yeah, I guess I might proceed to do wall, seeing you've seen me doing wall, and then when I come back in the next one we might do some more leaves. Each week I'm planning a third of this because we've got 3 weeks to work on this. Most of the folks are just doing their backgrounds for their bigger scale pieces, but I'm doing a separate piece I think for each of the prompts that we'll be getting. So this is the background prompt. But I think I will proceed to do the table, unless I leave the things on the table so that I can add those as we get the prompts with the Roxy girls. But I do want to do some larger standalone pieces as well, using different techniques. So if you're interested in seeing lots of different techniques, often using scraps, because that's kind of my gig, but also probably doing some thread painting or other things that I love, then definitely, if you're not subscribed and if you'd like to, yeah, do that, because then there's no cost in subscribing. It's just something you click and then it will let you know when there's a video out. Particularly, I think if you click that little bell thing, I don't know exactly how things work. So as you can see, it's starting to stitch it down really well. You can see on the back where you've done your stitching. And you can run your finger over, and it's actually working incredibly well already. I'll just take my needle to the back and just secrete it in here and hopefully not stab myself when I forget. But but I'll just bring you down so you can have a look at how it is actually looking. Just zooming you in. Hopefully you've got enough light. Just moving the light around. I am so happy that we did the grey behind there. I just think it's giving such a good effect to the wall. And yeah, I love that, and I love how the leaves are looking, and I love just that little glint that the metallics give. I think that's going to be perfect. It's just going to, yeah, look like the light just catching little insects in the garden. It's often initially you see the it's obviously much later in the afternoon, evening, where you see the fireflies. We love seeing those initially. We do have them here in Victoria as well, but you just don't see them as often. So I hope you enjoyed that little foray. I am going to continue working on the piece, and I'll come back as we do different sections, like when we're doing the flowers, when we're doing around the door, because some of the brush strokes there are more little circular-y sort of ones. So as we do different bits, the windows, although I did discuss some of my plans for the windows, and as we do different stitching, or if I change my approach on stitching. So yeah, definitely stay tuned, and thank you so very much for watching and coming along on this journey, and I hope it's given you inspiration. Thanks everyone. Bye.